Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining me in the record room today. Thought I would try something a little different this time and take a special look at reggae albums in my collection that are turning 50 in 2026, the class of 1976, if you will. 1976 was a monumental year for reggae music, perhaps comparable to 1967 in rock, in which you had social and political turmoil giving rise to an intense outburst of musical creativity and resulting in some of the best loved classics of all time. I'm going to sort these albums into 5 different sections: solo vocals, group vocals, instrumentals, DJ, and dub albums, and attempt to filter out albums where the date is uncertain or it may have been released slightly earlier, re-released in 1976, that kind of thing. I'm going to avoid various artists' compilations and probably Studio One for the most part, where dates are especially amorphous to pin down. Apologies if I do get anything wrong here. First, an overview on what was going on in Jamaica in 1976. It was an especially turbulent year, an election year in which the conservative opposition Jamaican Labour Party, headed by Edward Seaga, was determined to unseat the leftist People's National Party of Prime Minister Michael Manley. And the tone of the year was set in the very early days of January, when an IMF and World Bank conference in Kingston sparked weeks of demonstrations, protests, fire bombings, and running gun battles by street gangs affiliated with either one political party or the next. Michael Manley, Prime Minister, would take measures by announcing that anyone found in possession of an illegal firearm would be sent away to life in prison without parole. However, the violence would continue off and on for months to come. Late January would also see the notorious poison flour incident, in which flour contaminated by the pesticide parathion was distributed to consumers, costing up to 17 lives, from what I understand. The violence between the political parties flared up again in May, when 50 gunmen affiliated with one of the political parties cordoned off a housing tenement and torched it while preventing rescue workers from getting inside, or the residents from escaping, even reportedly tossing children back towards the flames. By June, Michael Manley had had enough and imposed a state of emergency on the island, effectively imposing martial law and announcing that lawbreakers would be dealt with under heavy manners or severely. This catchphrase later commemorated by the gravel-voiced Prince Farai in his song Under Heavy Manners, with the album appearing the following year, 1977. Michael Manley had also authorized the creation of local militias called Home Guards, who were given rudimentary firearms training and tasks with patrolling their neighborhoods in an attempt to quell the unrest. This also commemorated in song by Mikey Dread with Home Guard, produced by Lee Scratch Perry at the Black Ark, with elsewhere the increasing turmoil in the streets of Jamaica, mentioned in songs such as Ballistic Affair by Leroy Smart, and of course Police and Thieves by Junior Mervyn, which became the anthem of the 1976 Notting Hill Carnival in the UK, which was marked by riots sparked by unrest and rage over racist police and unfair laws. Another song talking about the increasing state of crisis, War in a Babylon, aka It's Sipple Out There by Max Romeo. All the music created in 1976 intrinsically linked with the political events going on in Jamaica. The year would culminate with the attempted assassination of Bob Marley himself, who had recorded a song called Smile Jamaica and agreed to perform at a festival in early December of the same name, but he was seen as endorsing one political party over the other and was targeted by gunmen, narrowly escaping with his life. He returned to perform at the event, then left Jamaica for about 18 months. The election was held later in December, in which Michael Manley won re-election in a landslide. Next, we'll take a look at the music of 1976. 1976 boasted an incredible array of albums by solo reggae singers, many of them given an extra boost in visibility, distribution, and promotion through major labels like Island Records, which was pushing Bob Marley into the first third world superstar, and other major labels like Virgin Records, which had also thrown its hat into the reggae ring. Bob Marley's major outing for the year was the Rastaman Vibration album, released at the end of April 1976. Island Records, boasting classics like Positive Vibration, Roots Rock Reggae, which charted in the US, Johnny Was, alluding to the miserable state of affairs in Jamaica, the militant Crazy Bald Head, and Who the Cat Fit, while War drew inspiration from a historical speech by His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie I. Bob Marley and the Wailers, technically not a solo album, wouldn't have been possible without the Wailers band, many other contributors, but by this point, Bob was the breakout superstar, and the original Wailers had permanently splintered, with Peter Tosh dropping his debut solo disc, Legalize It, on Columbia. Again, another major label getting into the reggae arena, and the sublime Blackheart Man by Bunny Wailer, also released through Island Records. Indispensable classics, all three of them. Meanwhile, Island continued to push its other roster of reggae artists, with Burning Spear following up his seminal Marcus Garvey LP with Man in the Hills, shortly before dispensing with the services of his backing singers and continuing as a solo artist. More pastoral affair than Marcus Garvey. While Toots and the Maytals delivered Reggae Got Soul, as accurate a title as you'll find, and once again on Island Records. Another very soulful reggae singer took a break from vocal duties in the Zap Pow band to deliver his debut solo album, Soul Reggae, on the Water Lily label. Beresford Hammond, sometimes just called Beres Hammond, this would be the start of a very long career, continuing to this day. While major league reggae singers like Gregory Isaacs would deliver All I Have Is Love, missing that one from the collection, and close rival Dennis Brown would release Deep Down, produced by 90 The Observer, both Gregory Isaacs and Dennis Brown on the ascent. The troubled singer Junior Biles would release Jordan through Pete Weston's Micron label. shortly before suffering an intense mental breakdown, which sidelined his career, while another singer rising in popularity, Jacob Miller, would take a break from vocal duties in the Inner Circle Band, which would also release an album in 1976, to put out his solo debut, Tenement Yard, seen here on Jam Sounds, but basically the same Inner Circle Band backing him, just a more rootical approach than the Inner Circle's typical crossover-oriented music, while Pat Kelly would release Lonely Man through the Riley Incorporated label from brothers Winston and Buster Riley. Delroy Wilson would have a major hit with a cover of Bob Marley's I'm Still Waiting, included on the Sarge LP, produced by Lloyd Charmers for his Charmers label. Bob Marley's songs increasingly being covered by other reggae artists, not always to his liking, but his status as a songwriter growing in regards. Meanwhile, producer, multi-instrumentalist Clive Hunt would release the introspective Sata Eye album under the pseudonym of Lizard, released by Trojan Records in the UK. Fred Lox's Black Star Liner would appear in 1976. Some sources say 1975, the Black Star Liner LP. While Bunny Lee's major hit maker, Johnny Clark, would benefit from an association with Virgin Records to release 2 albums, Authorized Version, all Bunny Lee Flying Cymbals Productions, the original Virgin label there, and also a further set, Rockers Time Now. The singer John Holt would have a prolific year, releasing 2,000 Volts of Holt, among others, taking more of a middle-of-the-road approach to reggae music, a lot of covers, a lot of love songs, while the more difficult to pin down, quite mystical, British-based reggae singer Delroy Wilson, or Washington rather, would deliver the first of 2 albums for Virgin Records with Isis, while the maverick reggae producer Keith Hudson's brief stint with Virgin did not fare so well. The notorious 2 expensive albums flirting with funk and R&B. Reggae singer Susan Cadogan made a splash in the UK with her self-titled album for Trojan, while the Lovers Rock phenomena began to kick off in the UK with Louisa Marks's Caught You in a Lie. But some of the biggest albums that year, also Linval Thompson dropped his debut, Don't Cut Off Your Dreadlocks, produced again by Bunny Lee, recent reissue through Charlie Records in the UK. But perhaps one of the most seminal albums of the year, of course, was Max Romeo's massive War in a Babylon, featuring that original title song, sometimes called in Jamaica, It's Sipple Out There, or It's Slippery Out There, describing the treacherous conditions in Jamaica, produced by Lee Scratch Perry at his Black Ark Studio, landmark reggae album, given a promotional push by Island Records, and a cornerstone of Lee Perry's career, and perhaps Max Romeo's greatest album. Could not have happened perhaps at any other time, but that crucial year of 1976.
War
1976 would also boast an incredible array of albums by reggae groups, both new and veteran. From its initial recording at Studio One in 1969, the Abyssinians' Sata Masagana had developed a reputation as reggae's unofficial national anthem, and it finally formed the centerpiece of their debut album, also called Sata Masagana, which had surfaced in 1975 in very limited pressings. But in 1976, it would get a much fuller release, appearing on the Penetrate label in the UK. Sata Masagana by Harmony Trio, the Abyssinians, one of the most spiritual and cultural of all reggae vocal groups. But the album would be heavily bootlegged and would also later appear under the alternate title of Forward On to Zion with a different cover. This is a 2006 expanded reissue from Heartbeat Records. UK reggae was also beginning to heat up, and long-running group Aswad would record their self-titled debut in 1976, having marched themselves into Island Records offices and asking to see someone about a record deal, waiting around for hours until somebody finally agreed to meet with them. Aswad's self-titled debut, quite jazzy, but also very conscious and Afrocentric, Rasta-centric British reggae from a group that would soon be hailed as the Young Lions of UK reggae. Another long-running UK reggae group, in fact, the first self-contained reggae band, the Cimarrons, would journey down to Jamaica to record their debut album, On the Rock. It's a recent reissue from Lantern Recordings, featuring the simmering Wake Up Jamaican. Count Ossie and the Mystic Revelation of Rastafari had followed up their debut disc, the ambitious triple LP Grew Nation, a few years before, and had followed it up with Tales of Mozambique in 1975, but it would appear in the UK in 1976, sadly the same year in which group leader Count Ossie lost his life in an automobile accident in Jamaica. Meanwhile, the Gladiators would be signed to Virgin Records, another self-contained group, and deliver the intense Trench Town mix-up, paying tribute again to Bob Marley with a cover of Soul Rebel, while some of the other tracks, simmering urgent dispatches from the front lines of the embattled ghetto neighborhoods of Kingston, Jamaica. This is a 2000 reissue from Virgin Records. The Gladiators, an essential classic Trench Town mix-up. Meanwhile, long-running harmony group the Heptones would deliver Cool Rasta, released on Trojan Records in 1976. Always loved Ottoline off this album. Vocal tour de force, and the acclaimed Night Food album, recorded at Harry J's studio and released once again on Island Records. And this would include Country Boy, I've Got the Handle, and the classic Book of Rules. Another long-running act would make something of a comeback. Justin Hines and the Dominoes had retired to the countryside of Jamaica, and producer Jack Ruby was commissioned to record an album with them on the back of the success of his production of Burning Spear's Marcus Garvey, with a much more rural and reflective brand of roots reggae, and featuring the gospel-tinged vocals of Justin Hines. While over in Canada, roots reggae was beginning to take off, and the Aishan people would deliver their debut album, Roots, on the GRT label, produced by David Clayton Thomas, former lead singer of Blood, Sweat and Tears, no less. While another very rural, country-inflected Jamaican group, the Mighty Maytones, would also release their debut album, Madness, produced by Gigi Ranglin, original pressing, red vinyl on the Burning Sounds label out of the UK. Madness by the Maytones, an overt commentary on what was going on in Jamaica. While yet another harmony trio, as the three-person vocal group format exploded in Jamaica. Message from the Meditations, appearing in 1976, produced by Dobby Dobson on his Double D label, and built around some of their hits recorded at Channel 1 and other studios, including their breakout, Woman is Like a Shadow. Another vocal trio, yet again, the Mighty Diamonds had recorded a series of hits that established Channel 1 studio and the rockers sound pioneered by its house band, the Revolutionaries, increasingly driven by the militant double drumming of Sly Dunbar, and their debut album, The Right Time, would be built around the title track with the militant crack of Sly Dunbar's drums in the opening seconds, announcing that the rockers' style of reggae rhythm was about to take over reggae music, later reissue from Shanachie Records out of North America. There's the Diamonds there. While Yabby U's Conquering Lion album would finally appear in the UK with a different cover and under the title of Ramadam on the Lucky label, if I'm not mistaken. Meanwhile, a very soul-inflected reggae group, Zap Pow, would release Revolution, Trojan Records, and self-titled Zap Pow, featuring the heavily sampled Last War and featuring the soulful lead vocals of Beres Hammond, who also released his solo debut, Soul Reggae, that year, and that one appeared on Island Records. Meanwhile, Inner Circle had released their debut disc, Reggae Thing, featuring some roots-blazing tracks like Forward Jaja Children, Tired for Liquid in a Bush, and others, though later albums would pursue a much more commercially oriented direction, moving into rock and disco overtones, while lead singer Jacob Miller had also released his solo debut, Tenement Yard, that year. And a splinter group from Inner Circle, Third World, had convened and recorded their debut album, self-titled, 1976, through Island Records. Once again, many of these albums would not have happened, maybe would not have taken the shape they did, and certainly wouldn't have been given the promotional push and visibility without the backing of major labels like Island Records. Classic debut set from Third World, who would go on to much bigger and better things, but a accomplished debut, leading off with their own very respectable cover of the Abyssinians' Sata Masagana.
So I take a walk from 6th Street, trying to prove something, going to the bottom of 8th Street. From corner to corner, you can hear, yes, the youth, they must shout, not the dread, yes, them dread, not the dread, not the rude, not the cool, not the dread, yes, them dread, for they stand up in Babylon.
1976 would see an explosion in dub LPs hitting the market, following something of a breakthrough the year before, particularly in the UK, where Winston Edwards had released King Tubby Meets the Upsetter at the Grassroots of Dub on his Fey Music label, which had been a very influential album release over there. 1976, the numbers of dub albums hitting the market would proliferate with a number of all-time classics coming out, and in particular, some of the first dub albums ever released by a major label. These would include Vital Dub, Well Charged, from Virgin Records, featuring a very stoned friend of Don Letts on the cover. This would feature dub versions to the Mighty Diamonds' Right Time album, recorded at Channel 1 Studio. Also, Island Records would release Garvey's Ghost in 1976, follow-up to the breakthrough Marcus Garvey album from the year before. Full-length dub counterpart to that album, though many felt that it suffered from being mixed in the UK rather than backyard in Jamaica. Mango copy there. Burning Spear, Garvey's Ghost, full-length dub counterpart to the Marcus Garvey album. Channel 1 studio in Jamaica, 29 Maxfield Avenue, was setting the pace for reggae in 1976 with its crisply militant rockers rhythm, which would power a flood of lightly dubbed up instrumental albums. Dubstrumental, you might think of them as, that started to surface in 1976. Beginning perhaps with Vital Dub, but also running across Sata Dub, Strictly Roots, Full Charge, Revival Dub, Roots Now, and of course the iconic Revolutionary Sounds. Unfortunately, somebody's cut out the center of my copy, but the Jamaican Well Charged label with the famous Che Guevara cover, showcasing the crisply militant rhythms of Channel 1 and its house band, The Revolutionaries, powered by Sly Dunbar's drumming. Joe Gibbs' studio, meanwhile, was emerging as a rival to Channel 1, and it was there that Ossie Hibbert would record the Earthquake dub set, which appeared through Joe Gibbs's label, recent reissue there. And Joe Gibbs would also release the second volume in the African Dub series, featuring a grotesque caricature of the Queen on the cover. Fisher Hi-Fi copy there. Joe Gibbs label. Again, bright updates of many classic rhythms of the past, particularly from Studio One, updated for the times and the newly militant and dread tone of the rhythms being recorded. African Dub Chapter 2, Chapter 3 would make an even bigger breakthrough on the UK scene. Following this, the dub albums would continue to proliferate as seemingly every producer on the island with a stockpile of rhythm tracks would issue their own dub albums. Phil Pratt would release a dub album in 1976 in the UK on the Student label called The Best Dub Album in the World. Very humble title, though there weren't that many on the market at that time. That would later be reissued under the new title of Dub in Blood. Phil Pratt Productions from his Sunshot label. Producer and music talent impresario Tommy Cowan would release Rasclat Dub in the UK on the Grunation label. Rasclat Dub. While in the UK, Winston Edwards would follow up 1975's King Tubby Meets the Upsetter at the Grassroots of Dub with King Tubby Surrounded by the Dreads at the National Arena, 26 September 1975. Not actually a live recording, but something of a studio recreation of some of the dubs that potentially might have been played at this live event, which had actually happened in Jamaica. Studio 16 reissue there, King Tubby, and many of the dub albums through 1976 would pass through King Tubby's studio, either handled by the man himself or increasingly by his apprentices. In the UK also, Dennis Bovell would issue some of the first of his dub albums attributed to the 4th Street Orchestra, aka Matumbi, with Lego Afoidis. Tapazuki would issue In Dub, Blood and Fire reissue from the 1990s there. And King Tubby would continue with the first of his collaborations with producer Harry Moody on King Tubby's Meets Harry Moody in Dub Conference Volume 1. Harry Moody, famed for using strings in his productions, which King Tubby found suitable additional flavor for his well-considered dub mixes. Meanwhile, King Tubby's Prophecies of Dub took some of the hardest early rhythms from Yabby U, giving them an intense dub mixing at King Tubby's studio, coming out sounding something like the apocalypse from the biblical book of Revelation, with a melody that you can hum along to. Blood and Fire reissue from the 1990s, heavyweight vinyl, some of the heaviest dubs ever committed to wax. It would be followed by the similarly titled King Tubby's Prophecies of Dub, plural, though this wasn't actually Yabby U Productions, not mixed by King Tubby, but rather by his apprentice, Pat Kelly, not hitting the apocalyptic heights of the singular Prophecy of Dub, but still an enjoyable listen. Meanwhile, Lee Perry would unleash perhaps his consummate statement as Super Ape, credited to the Upsetters, considering this a dub album, although in typical Lee Perry fashion, he didn't play by the rules, but included some vocals in there as well. Cornerstone of his Black Ark productions, maybe the finest album he ever recorded, with the iconic cover there, and that had originally appeared as Scratch the Super Ape in Jamaica with a different cover and a different mix, which can be found on the Apology double CD collection from Trojan Records. Meanwhile, perhaps the greatest dub album of all time, be hard-pressed to get an argument from me on that score. Augustus Pablo would unleash his collaboration with King Tubby's in King Tubby's Meets the Rockers Uptown, later reissue 1984 through Shanachie Records in North America. Not much to say about this. King Tubby's Meets the Rockers Uptown, title track, the dub mix to Jacob Miller's Baby I Love You So. DJs would also make a strong showing on LP format in 1976, and many of them benefiting from the higher profile given from appearing on a major or at least larger label. These would include Big Youth's Defiant Natty Cultural Dread, maybe at the cutting edge of DJing at that point in time. That album appearing on Trojan Records in 1976, led off with the sizzling Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. Channel 1 would fire off a massive hit with Dillinger's CB200, leading to an album of the same name appearing through Island Records. Dillinger, aka Lester Bullocks, and that would be followed up the same year by The Bionic Dread, not quite as successful. Also on Island Records, recorded at Channel 1 Studios with the Revolutionaries House Band. Meanwhile, Iroy would lead off with Crisis Time, released on Virgin Records in the UK. Classic Virgin label. Iroy directly commenting on the strife going on in Jamaica, and he would also hit with the Dread Baldhead album for Bunny Lee, as well as Musical Shark Attack, another set for Virgin Records. Ja Lion, aka Ja Lloyd, would fire off the deep, dense Columbia Collie album, recorded at Lee Perry's Black Ark studio and given international release through Island Records. The heady and thick musical stew of Lee Perry's Black Ark studio coming to a full boil in 1976, while Prince Jazzbo's equally compelling Natty Passing Through unfortunately would see a somewhat more limited release. Recent reissue through Studio 16. That album would also be released in the US under the alternate title of Ital Corner on the Clock Tower label. Classic DJ set, one of two released by Lee Perry in 1976. Ja Whoosh would release Chalice Blaze, produced by Leonard Santic Chin on the Student label in the UK, as well as Dreadlocks Affair on Trojan Records. Ja Whoosh, another up-and-coming DJ, doing well in 1976. Meanwhile, Prince Farai's debut album, something of a concept record, Psalms for I, had been released in Jamaica in 1975, but would see a belated UK release in 1976 on the Carib Gems, when it was heard by a young music promoter named Adrian Sherwood, and him releasing this album in the UK would lead to a personal friendship with Prince Farai and drawing Adrian Sherwood further into music production down the line with his On You Sound label. Meanwhile, a DJ called Tapazuki had recorded his debut album earlier in the UK, but returned to Jamaica, recording the tracks that made up MPLA, originally released in 1976 on the Click label in the UK, and re-released a couple of years later on Virgin's new Frontline imprint, but originally came out 1976. Meanwhile, U-Roy, the DJ Godfather, would follow up his Dread in a Babylon album for Virgin Records with Natty Rebel, featuring him resplendent in African garb. Another release from Virgin Records, getting more fully into the reggae game with U-Roy, and he would also release back in Jamaica the more obscure Dread in Africa set, reissued by Jamaican Art not too long ago. One last one, not in my collection, unfortunately, but the late Melbourne James, aka Ja Stitch, would release No Dread, Can't Dead, his debut album in 1976, following a brutal incident in which he was shot in the face in Jamaica, following a incident with a rival sound system. So that was the DJ's year of 1976.
Gotta keep up stuff, you know. I think trade, been trade with the rhythm.
Some good reggae instrumental albums would also come out in 1976. The original foundation supergroup of Jamaican music from the ska years of the early 1960s would make a partial return with some of the original members regrouping to record the sessions that became the Rebirth album, also sometimes called the legendary Scatolites. Recent reissue from Studio 16 here, and that album was treated to a full-length dub workout as Herb Dub Collie Dub. The remaining Scatolites not playing ska this time, but adapting to the prevailing roots reggae rhythms. Another horns player from that early generation, trombonist Rico Rodriguez, under the auspices of Island Records, would release the stately and majestic Man from Warika album. Island Records here. But when released in the US, it appeared as the only reggae on the famed Blue Note label. While another founding member of the Scatolites, saxophonist and flutist Tommy McCook, would release Reggae in Jazz, Pressure Sounds reissue from several years back, as well as the more easy listening oriented Lover's Time on the US-based Carl's Records label. Lover's Time as well. There was the percussion-heavy album by Mabrak, released on the Jigsaw label, reissue through Dugout Records there. And Cedric Brooks's mystical, Afrocentric oriented combo, The Light of Saba, would release their follow-up album, Light of Saba in Reggae, again featuring a Bob Marley cover in No Woman, No Cry, as well as the more incendiary Outcry CDR copy. Still waiting on a vinyl reissue of that one. Meanwhile, summing up the state of affairs in Jamaica, Joe Gibbs and the Professionals would release the instrumental State of Emergency album with a cover showing civilians being detained and searched by security forces, though the music inside a bit brighter and more up-tempo maybe than you would expect from the cover, as Joe Gibbs' studio, as well as his close rival Channel One, would heavily focus on spruced up updates of classic rhythms from the past, particularly from Studio One. Just a couple more in an outer national style as I wrap up my look at 1976. As you've seen, many of these albums given much greater visibility and promotional push by involvement from major record labels getting involved in reggae music, reggae starting to build up fan base and make serious inroads in other countries besides Jamaica and the UK, particularly the United States and Canada. In America, expatriate Jamaican by the name of Lloyd Bulwaki Barnes had built his own studio in the Bronx and was starting to ramp up production for what would be a cornerstone of legitimate American recorded reggae. One of his albums offered that year was Reckless Roots Rockers, basically reissue from about 20 years ago. Also, an American singer by the name of Martha Velez would venture down to Jamaica and have her album Escape from Babylon done in a reggae style with production by no less than Bob Marley, covering a couple of his songs, and with assistance from Lee Perry as well. And that would appear on the Sire label in 1976, early major label foray into reggae. Also a little bit more obscure, Lee Perry Black Ark production of a lesser known American singer from the West Coast named Lion Zion, who ventured down to the Black Ark in Jamaica and recorded Reggae in America, private press on House of Natty Records. Lee Perry produced Reggae in America. Also up in Canada, Stranger Cole would release the seriously sought after Forward in the Land of Sunshine album in Toronto. Not in my collection, unfortunately. I did hold a copy in my hands once a few years back. Should have bought it. Already expensive then. And also in Toronto, another group of white Torontonians would release their debut as Chalawa, an album called Deepest and Darkest. That one also kind of hard to come by, but the following year they would come back with a full-length dub version to Bob Marley and the Wailers' Exodus album. Canadian group Chalawa recorded their debut in 1976. So a cornerstone year for reggae, many breakthroughs achieved, even while Jamaica itself was devolving into political strife and crisis. Hope you've enjoyed my look at 1976, guys. Cheers, and thanks for watching.